I'll let you hit mute. Okay. Welcome everyone. And I'll do a little bit of an introduction, but Noah's here from Hunt's Camera and Video, and I can't say enough about the support that we get from Hunt's, Noah and Gary. It's made my life a lot easier trying to put together programs based on a theme where we can all learn and have fun while we're doing that, and speak to some people that are really outstanding in the field of photography, nature, and ecology. So I'll thank them. Noah's also been so kind as a few minutes ago sent me a list of sales items and stuff that are going up. And I'm going to ask him just to take a couple minutes before we introduce Hector and give us a little rundown of what we might be able to find at Hunt's during this Christmas season, in case you want to make a slight suggestion to someone you might be close to. Go ahead, Noah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. It's really great to be on here this evening. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and enjoyed their time off and spent some time with some friends and family. Really excited to be back into the fresh week with Hector doing a presentation this evening. We've been working with Hector for a long time, and he's been doing a lot of different programs for us really since the pandemic. It's been so great to work with him and have him come on and share his expertise and his knowledge and his incredible work with all of our fellow customers and camera clubs that we work with throughout the country. So really excited to have him on tonight to present. Along with his presentation, I do have some specials built in that will be sent out after the fact. So if you're looking to pick up anything new for yourself, it's all gear and equipment that Hector uses that he'll probably touch upon a little bit this evening. So if you're interested in picking anything else up, you can go ahead and do that at some discounted pricing. We do have still Cyber Monday pricing going on, which is just on the front page of our website. And if there's anything specific you're looking for that you don't see any specials or promotions on, shoot me an email. My email will be in the follow-up. If you're looking for anything specific, let me know. I can see what I can do as far as special pricing goes and work up something exclusively for you. So no matter what you're looking for, we'll take care of you, get you some special pricing, and make sure that you get that new gear and equipment that you have on your list. I do want to mention a couple other quick things before I pass it over to Hector. We do have a few more webinars coming up over the next couple of months that we've worked on putting together. These are all completely free webinars that we put together with different photographers and vendors from around the country. The next one is actually next week on December 9th. This is with Daryl Gouline, who's a Canon Explorer of Light. He's going to be talking about wildlife on all 7 continents, as well as macro photography you can do in your own backyard. And all of the links to register for these will be in the email that I sent to Jay. So you'll get a copy of all those, so you can go ahead and register for any of them. Next one is actually next Friday with Tyler Ficker about the basics of bird photo editing. So he's going to be talking all about editing and post-production for bird photography specifically. So if you're looking to learn more about that and up your game as far as post-production goes, definitely a session you want to check out. Then going into the new year, January 13th, a young photographer we've been working with from Florida, Luca Martinez, will be doing a program about the wonders of the wetlands, which is all about photographing down in the Everglades. He lives just about an hour outside the Everglades and is probably there 3 to 4 times a week photographing and being out in nature. So we're really excited to have him on doing this presentation. I've seen him give this presentation a few months ago and it was outstanding. So that will be a really exciting one, especially for all of you people who are still down in Florida right now, which I would imagine is probably most of you. That will be a really great program to check out. And then lastly, we just lined this one up with Nico Carver about astrophotography without a telescope. So if you're looking to learn more about astrophotography, that's going to be a really awesome session to check out. And I have another one in the works right now that I'm also working on about the basics of astrophotography and how to get into astrophotography. So that'll probably be sometime in February or March as well. A couple other quick things. Space Coast, for those of you who are familiar with it, is coming back in person this year. It's going to be in Titusville. So definitely, if you're going to be around and available February 2nd through the 6th, try to attend. I will be down there with Luca, who is going to be doing that presentation for us in January. Him and I are going to be leading some in the field trips, some workshops. We'll have our vendor area there selling products, showing off new gear and equipment, facilitating loaners for you to try out new gear out in the field. field. So that's going to be a really exciting weekend. I'm looking forward to getting back down to Florida and enjoying some warm weather, especially in February. So that will be great. Hopefully I will see some of you there. For those of you who aren't familiar with Luca, he's a very talented young photographer. He actually just got back from a trip from North Carolina, but has been shooting a ton in the Everglades, does a lot of work with the owls down there, and does some really amazing video work too. So you can go check him out on Instagram. And two other things before I turn it over, we just lined up this really awesome workshop with the San Diego Birding Festival with these two young photographers that we've been working with, Christopher Smith and Alex Isengart. This is an in-person workshop out in San Diego. It's going to be on February 20th. If anybody's interested in this, I'll put the link down in the chat to check it out with all the details and all the information. That's going to be a really exciting session, doing some shorebird photography out in San Diego with a pre-session Zoom, like kind of introduction meet and greet, and then there's going to be a post-session Zoom image review as well. And the last thing, which I just found out today, is our good friend Mike Moats is going to be doing his macro conference in person next year. It's actually going to be up in Mass. So if any of you are back in Mass come April, or want to take a trip up in April, it's going to be April 22nd and 23rd. That's going to be really exciting. He has 70 spots available. Himself, he will be teaching Ellen Annan, Jerry Jones, Elise Bender, and Nicholas Kanakis, all amazing macro photographers. So if you're interested in macro photography, I'll drop a link down in the chat to this as well. But again, I want to thank you everybody for being on here this evening. Hector, I'm really excited to have you do this presentation. I will pass it over to you and let you take things away. I won't be able to be on the entire time tonight, but if anybody has any questions for me, I'll drop my email in the chat as well. You can reach out to me anytime. So thank you again, Jay.
No,
and,
one thing I would like to mention is that, we see hunts as a, photographic place to purchase the equipment and stuff, but they also supply a lot of other things. If you don't go on their website, you might want to check it out. And if you know somebody looking for binoculars or scopes, they happen to have a few of those just hanging around. I live not too far from the Boston area where the office, so I go in there and I see these other things. I'm tempted, but I'll stay with my big lens.
We got a lot of stuff. It's like a giant candy store for photographers, is how I like to describe it.
Okay. With that said, Noah, I'm going to look forward to having Hector start to talk to us. A lot of us have seen your bio because I put it out on the invitation, as you saw, Hector. But the fact that what you talked about around Texas, that seems to be only a portion of where you've traveled and where you do your work. And it's pretty impressive. I think that everyone will be anxious to see what you have to say and how we can capture better photos. So with that being said, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jay. Also, thank you, Noah. Thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for inviting me to speak. And always a pleasure to talk to different groups throughout the country. One of the things me and Noah and Gary talked not long ago, one of the few good things that this pandemic brought to us is the ability that we can now talk to all these photo clubs throughout the country, where before the pandemic, we never did this. And this has opened up networking to a whole new level for us. So it's been great sharing ideas and sharing what we do, with different clubs like you all's, this last couple of years.
Would you like me to share your screen, or you want to?
I'll go ahead and I'll share it here. First, I want to ask everybody can hear me okay? No problems in listening or hearing me with the mic. So during the presentation, I do take questions. I just ask that I have the chat window open. If you do have a question, maybe in regard to a specific slide or something that I'm talking at that specific moment, send it through the chat. I do have it open so I can see them. If the question is in topic, which is what I'm talking about, I'll be more than happy to answer it. If the question is a little off topic, what we'll do is that we'll wait till after the presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you guys might have. So again, if you do have a question on a specific slide or on a specific topic that I'm happy to be talking about at the moment, feel free to send it through the chat window. I have it open here so I can see them as they come in. Okay. So let me get this going here. Let me share this screen. Here we go. Whoops, what did I do? Give me 1 second here. Share. There we go. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me just make sure I got my, I happen to lose my chat window. There you go, got it back. Okay. So becoming a better wildlife photographer, what I'm going to be talking about today is some of the field techniques and the planning that I do before I go out and shoot. As Jay mentioned, I am a wildlife photographer here in Texas. I'm based in Deep South Texas. I'm based out of the McAllen, Texas area, down in the lower Rio Grande Valley. I am literally, my house sits about 12 miles from the Mexican border. That tells you how far south I am. Being that I'm in one of the biggest birding areas of the state, I do a lot of bird photography, but of course I also do a lot of other type of wildlife photography. I'm very blessed that I get to travel to multiple locations in Latin America, South America, Central America. I also travel to 3 different countries in Africa to photograph: Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa. And I also travel in Scandinavia to do some of my photography, and of course all throughout the US as well. So I've been very blessed that I've been able to do this, full time now for the last 15 years. And I'm very blessed that I get to travel to all these wonderful locations to photograph wildlife. So what I will be sharing again today is some of the things that I do. So how many of you want to become better wildlife photographers? Usually I do this presentation live, and I'll ask for a raise of hands. And usually I get about 100% people raising their hand, right? Because we do want to become better at the craft that we all love and the craft that we all are passionate about. So how do we get there? What I'm going to be covering today is some of the, like I said, some of the things that I do. And I'm going to start with some of the basics. Some of this stuff you probably heard before, but it's always good to get a nice little refresher to start with in terms of, getting us going. So one of the things as a photographer that we always want to get better at is we have to master what I call the photography triangle, right? We need to understand what aperture, shutter speed, and ISO do for us, and what they, how they work together, right? We also need to learn about composition, right? Composition is what tells the story. Is a good composition will tell a better story. We want to, when we photograph and we show our images, what we want to do, right, is we want to capture our audience, right? So a better composition will do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the guidelines that we follow, because there really is no rules in photography, as you all know, but it's more like guidelines that we can follow to create, better compositions. But again, the main reason we need a good composition is because we want to capture our audience and also show what our eyes saw that day, right? I'm going to talk about, having the correct photo equipment and gear, not only in terms of the right camera and lens, but also, the supporting gear. For example, the right tripod, the right beanbag, the right support, and different things like that. As a wildlife photographer, understanding wildlife behavior, learning our subjects is one of the most important things, right? We need to understand what our subjects do or don't do if we want to capture them properly. So, understanding wildlife behavior is a must for any wildlife photographer. And last but not least, of course, as you all know, if we don't get out there and practice and do this over and over and over, we're not going to get, we're not going to get good at it. So, talking about the basics again, I'm going to just go through this real quick and then we'll get into the other stuff. When we look at aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, we need to understand what they do to, what happens when you change one to the other one, and so on and so forth. So for example, if I'm shooting this lioness with her 2 cubs and the background has more light than they are, in other words, they're backlit, I need to understand that I need to overexpose this image to get some detail on them. So if I'm raising up my shutter speed, if I'm shooting full manual, what's going to happen to my aperture? What's going to happen to my ISO, right? So understanding how these 3 things work together, I was able to overexpose this image and get the correct exposure, right? Because again, when you have a subject that's backlit, we need to overexpose it to get some detail. Here's an example where it's the opposite. Here's a subject that is front lit and the background is a little bit darker. Again, understanding how these 3 things work together on how to expose this image properly is a basic that we all must know. Composition. Our images must tell a story. Our images must capture our audience, right? That's how you that's how you can showcase what you saw that day, or what what you experienced that day with your photographs. So following the guidelines of, different guidelines like rule of thirds, leading lines, good backgrounds, good depth is a must when we want to create good images. And this is, I call this a basic because, I have a whole program on just composition, but it is a basic thing that we must understand if we want our images to become better. So for example, if I'm trying to tell a story, as I have some bobwhite quail coming in towards me, I need to understand, everything from a point of view, depth, good backgrounds to isolate the subject. Even though the two bobwhites in the background are blurred out, the story is still there. So, creating a good composition by following the different guidelines will tell a better story, will capture our audience better when we're showcasing our images. So composition is a must, a basic, but a must. Correct photo equipment and gear, having the right lens, camera, combination, using flash or not using flash, is a must as well to create the images that you want. This is taken in Costa Rica, and I was at the lodge where we stay at, and the view from up there, this is on top of Cerro de la Muerte, and the view from up there is just gorgeous. And there's tons of hummingbirds flying around that area, and I wanted to capture a hummingbird with the background being the scene, behind that I was seeing. Of course, this was a little difficult because, again, in order for me to capture this view, I need to shoot this with a wide angle. And in order for me to fill the frame with a wide angle with a hummingbird, I need to be extremely close, right? So understanding the right photo gear, the photo equipment that I needed and how to set up properly, I was able to create this image. In this case, I shot this with a 16mm lens, and I'm literally an inch away from this Hummer. How did I do it? I basically set up right next to the hummingbird feeder, and I waited for them to come in and out. And as they were coming in and out, I was shooting with a wide angle, capturing the scene, filling my frame with my subject. I wanted it backlit because I wanted to show a sunset, scene. So this is backlit with no flash. Again, shot, you normally don't hear people shooting a hummingbird with a 16mm lens, but in this case, this was the only way to do it. So understanding that, I was able to create this image, right? Here's more hummingbirds. In this case, a little different. Here, this is a setup, this is a multi-flash setup. And this, I'm doing it with a long lens. I'm shooting this with a 400, lens. Again, but understanding the equipment that I needed, in this case, I'm using a long lens. I'm using a short burst of flash to stop the motion. And, I'm using I guess if you want to call it a background behind them to create that nice muted and make the two Hummers stand out. But again, understanding the equipment that I needed before going out there to create the image. Learning our subjects. As a wildlife photographer, we need to understand what our subjects do. We need to understand their behavior. We need to understand their seasonal patterns. And of course, we need to be at the right location for them. Here in South Texas, we have an abundance of roadrunners. Now, this is taken in the springtime. Can anybody tell me what this roadrunner is doing? Why is he going up this perch with the tail straight up, crest up? He is basically, this is during mating season. He's looking for a girl. That's basically what he's doing here. And he's hearing other roadrunners around, and he's defending his territory. So he's going to a high point to see who's around, because he wants to make sure that no other male runner comes in and takes his girl away. So understanding what they do and understanding and when they do it and how they do it, I was able to capture this image. I had seen them in this area very active. So I set up a blind. I set up a perch that I knew that he would climb on. And I just waited. And sure enough, took some time, but eventually one of them climbed. And as he was climbing up the perch, I was able to capture him, going up. If I would have tried to capture this, let's say this time of year, this would have never happened, because they don't do this behavior this time of year. They only do this behavior in the springtime when it's mating season. So again, understanding our subjects, seasonal patterns, and of course, the right location. This was taken this year in Kenya. I was in Kenya in August and September of this year. And we were following this this female cheetah with her 3 cubs. And as you can see, the grass was very tall. We could barely see them. And I told my clients that were with me, I said, guys, let's just be patient. We're going to follow. We're going to give them their space. We're following at a very, we were, I would say, about 60, 70 yards away. Eventually, they're hunting. Eventually, they're going to have to find a high spot to climb on to see. And that's what they do. When they find an old termite mount, they climb on it so they can see above the grass as they're hunting. So we just followed and waited, and eventually the image materialized, right? But understanding their behavior, understanding what they would do, we were able to capture this. We know this is shot with a 600 millimeter lens, so that gives you an idea how far away we are. It's a good distance of how far away we were. Again, we cannot off-road in this part of, this is at the Masai Mara, so we're shooting from the road. And again, we want to give them their space. We don't want to encroach into their territory and prevent them from hunting. But again, understanding behavior, I was able to capture this image. Last but not least, practice, 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 right? Birds in flight is probably the most thing I get asked about a lot, is how do I get better doing birds in flight? And the first thing I tell everybody is I can sit down here and teach you about settings, minimal shutter speeds, aperture, what kind of camera to use, what focus mode to use, and I'll teach you all the technical stuff in a classroom. But if you don't go out there and practice this, it won't come. Birds in flight is probably one of the things that you have to do it a lot to get good at, because you have to develop that mental memory and how to pan as the subject's moving, either left to right, or in this case, towards you. This is a golden eagle. This is shot in Finland, up in the Lapland area. This subject is coming towards me as he's flying, towards the blind that I'm in. So again, understanding, my camera settings and everything that I need to do is a must, but also having the practice to be able to keep the focus point on the subject as that subject is moving towards you. And that comes with practice. We have to do it over and over again. Shooting moving subjects probably is one of the most difficult things that if you don't practice and you don't go out there and do it, it just won't come. Again, I can give you classroom settings on everything that you need to know about camera settings, type of lenses to use. But if you don't go out there and practice, of course, this thing will, it will not come. So we need to get out there and practice our craft. So just to cover real quick the basics, we need to master the photography triangle, understanding aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and how they correlate to one another. We need to learn about composition. We need to learn the correct photo equipment and gear. Of course, as a wildlife photographer, we need to understand what our subjects do or don't do. And last but not least, of course, we need to practice. So these are the basics on what you need to have at all times to become a better wildlife photographer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of the field techniques or some of the things that I do when I go out to photograph. Now, what I'm sharing with you is field techniques that I go out when I go out to photograph by myself. It's very different when I'm with clients. I lead a lot of workshops throughout the world, and I guide for a lot of photographers here in South Texas. And that's a totally different approach because I'm there for my clients and it's a more of a teaching, environment. But what I'm sharing with you today is basically when I go out by myself to create my images, this is the things that I do and these are the things that I follow. Again, we talked about understanding your lens and the camera, what they can do. But using this appropriate supporting gear, it's a must for any wildlife photographer. If you look at my work, I'm different than everybody else. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm not saying that, you're wrong by not doing it, but everything that I shoot, I'm on some kind of support. I'm on a beanbag, I'm on a tripod, I'm on a ground pod, I'm on a monopod. I always have support. Now, I shoot a 600 millimeter f4. It's a big lens. So I cannot handhold my gear. It's just too heavy. I shoot the 600 f4, I shoot a 500 f4, and I shoot a 400 2.8. This is big glass. So again, I always am in some kind of support to help me to get better images because I just cannot handhold. I use different lighting options. For example, this is taken in South Africa. We're using LED panels to light up the scene as these lions are coming in to drink at night at this water hole at the Simanga Game Reserve in South Africa. So understanding what might happen before going out. I knew that I was going to set up all night in this water hole, hoping for some wildlife to come in and drink, taking the appropriate gear. I'm on a monopod. No, I'm sorry. I'm on a tripod in this case. I'm sitting in a sunken blind and I have two LED panels lighting up the scene. So I know what's going to happen when these cats come in. I got very lucky in this case that it was a very non-windy day. So the reflection is almost perfect. But again, understanding the gear that I needed before going out there, I was able to create this image. Same thing with photographing these bats in Central America. This is in this is in Costa Rica. We knew that we wanted to capture this, these are nectar feeding bats. They come to flowers at night, to feed. We knew that we wanted to capture these bats at night. So again, we went out and we set up. We had a LED panel that was constant light, so we can see them coming in. This is shot with a 70 to 200, so they're coming in for the flower regardless you're there or not, so you're not going to spook them. So we knew that we had that advantage. And again, just going out with the right gear and with the right image in mind before going out to be able to create the image. Red-eyed tree frog, probably the most iconic frog of Central America. This is shot with a macro. This is shot with a macro 105. In this case, this is flash. Pretty much all my macro I do with flash because it gives me a better, better conditions, because I shoot a lot of my macro at very, very, small apertures. This is shot at f/22. So I need more light to be able to illuminate my subject, because as you know, at f/22, you're letting very little light come in. The reason I shoot this at f/22 is because I need more depth of field. When we're shooting macro lenses, if you're shooting wide aperture, of course, your depth of field is paper thin. So I need to be able to create a wider depth of field. But then again, if I use straight flash, this wouldn't work. One, I would have a lot of hot spots. So I'm using a flash with a big diffuser on it. So understanding that I needed a diffuser to go on my flash for multiple reasons. One, to soften the light. Another one's to avoid hot spots on the subject. And again, just to create a much better image than just straight flash. Plus, we don't want to flash a night subject, with flash right on his face. So this flash is very, very diffused. It softens the light, and it creates a much pleasant, much better image. This is another macro shot. Then this one is actually without flash, but this is shot in the middle of the day because this is when these guys are active. This is a green link spider. This is here at home. This is here in South Texas. If anybody can tell me how big the spider is, these guys are small, about half the size of my pinky nail. It's a very, very small spider. So I'm shooting this with a 200 macro. He's literally standing on one little bud of a lantana bud. If you all know the lantana flower, the buds are very small. That gives you perspective, on how big this guy is. He's very, very small. But in this case, I shot this in the middle of the day because if I went there early morning when the light was great, they weren't there. If I went there late in the afternoon, guess what? They weren't there. I would see them at noon. That's when they come out and they sun. And of course, that's when the light's the worst, right? So what I did is I took a huge blanket and I used it as a diffuser. So I can diffuse not only him and the flower, but also the background behind him. Now, the background behind him is actually the ground. What you're seeing is red dirt and some grass on the background. Now, it's totally blurred because, done with camera settings. But not only did I need to diffuse the subject and the perch he's on, but I also needed to diffuse, the ground behind him so I could have nice, even, soft light versus harsh, midday light when these guys are out. Right point of view. This is huge. We capture wildlife different ways to enhance what they look like, to showcase, what's interesting about them. And so point of view is one of the things that I always look for when I'm looking at, creating images. Why do we want to photograph game animals? Let's say elk, deer, moose, lower than they are. We want to be either at eye level or lower than they are. Why is that? Because it makes them look bigger. When we're shooting up at something, it gives them a more grandeur type of look. And when we're shooting deer, of course, we want to see that big, the big rack, especially if we're photographing, let's say, a beautiful white-tailed buck or something like that. So point of view is huge when you're capturing wildlife. So I use blinds. A lot of my photography is from blinds. Where I can hide, where I can place myself in a position that I can get the angle that I need to capture that image or to capture that subject. Learn to work the location. Earlier today, when I first got on, you guys were talking about the location that you were in Florida, that you were visiting to photograph the bobcats. And I love to hear that you were saying, is that a morning location or is that an afternoon location? What's best? And that's how to do it. I get better images at a location the second time around than the first time around because I learn where's the best spot to position myself in. I learn where's the best spot in terms of lighting. Of course, wildlife behavior, we talked about this earlier, comes a lot into play here, but it's a must, folks, that you need to know where to position yourself to capture better images. Shooting from vehicles, of course, is great too, because the vehicle itself can become a hide, but learning how to shoot from vehicles properly will give you better images. Just don't park your truck or car and say, okay, I want to sit here and see what happens. No, learn the location, learn to work with it, learn where to see where the wildlife activity is, and see where you can position that vehicle so you can get a better angle, a better point of view to create a better image. This is shot here at home. This is a Roadrunner here at home. The blinds that we have at the ranch are all sunken blinds. You're literally 3 feet underground. So when you're sitting in our blinds and your lens is sticking out, your lens is literally 2 inches from the ground. Why is that? Because the perspective and the point of view that you get is much better than if we were shooting down at the subject. Look at the background here. Why is this background so good? Apart from camera settings, right? I'm shooting at a wide open, so the background blurs, but it's the perspective. It's the point of view. By being at eye level or lower than they are, the background is pushed further back so I can blur it better with camera settings. If I was standing up shooting down at this Roadrunner, what would be the background? It would be the ground right behind him, right? Because of the angle. I cannot blur something that close to him. But if I position myself lower to push the background back, I can blur it with camera settings. And that's why this image stands out better than if I would have been standing up shooting down at the subject. Now, of course, here we're capturing behavior. Again, back to wildlife behavior. This is in the spring. People always, this is one thing I get all the time. I want to come to the ranch and I want to capture a Roadrunner with a lizard. March, April. That's when they're looking for girls. That's when they're walking around with lizards, because they catch lizards all year long. But if they catch a lizard, let's say today, it's down the hatch instantly. They're not catching it to impress nobody. They're catching it to eat it. In March and April, they're catching it to show it to a girl so that they entice them to mate. So understanding that this happens only during mating season, you're going to have a much better chance of catching a Roadrunner walking around with a lizard, because in this case, he's looking for a girl. He's not looking to eat it. It's a price to entice mating, for a female Roadrunner. But again, point of view is what you want when you want to create these images. You're going to create much better images if you learn how to position yourself properly. Shorebirds, why do we go and lay down in the muck next to the water in a ground pod? So we can create this low perspective. By creating this low perspective, we're creating different things. One, this was a non-wind day, so it has a beautiful mirror glass effect on the water. Look at the seamless water to background. If I was standing up, that wouldn't happen, right? I would not get the seamless, water to the sky, background. It looks like an infinity water in this case, in this image, I want to call it. And that's all because I'm laying down literally in the mud with a ground pot, and my camera is literally maybe 2-3 inches above the water. So creating that low perspective going up to the subject is what makes this image. Of course, I was very lucky that I captured the behavior. I capture, him catching the little crab. But again, what makes the image more than anything else is the perspective and the low point of view here. I talked about deer a little earlier. Why do we want to be lower than or at eye level than? Because it makes him look bigger. If I would have shot down at this deer versus shooting up towards him, he would not look as grand as he looks here. Also, by shooting low, I create that beautiful depth. Look at the blurred out foreground. Then I have my subject sharp and that blurred out background. That creates depth. It gives the image 3-dimensionality when it's not. Photography is 2 dimensions, but if we can make it look more 3D, it emulates more what our eye saw that day, right? Because we see in 3D. Photography is not 3D, it's 2D. But if we can do stuff that will make it look more like what we saw, it makes for a better composition. So in this case, by getting low, pushing the background back and creating that depth, blurred foreground, subject sharp, middle ground, and your blurred background, you're creating depth. Your subject stands out better. And again, he looks more grand than, because that's what you want to showcase, right? On an image like this, on a subject like this. Oh, I see I have a question here. When you plan gear, do you also bring back gear for opportunities you don't plan for? Yes and no. I mean, I try to, if I can, if the opportunity is there, I'm a big believer is I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So, but a lot of times, I travel international for a lot of my photography, so I cannot carry everything with me. But when I'm driving to a location or somewhere where I really need, where I know the subject or I know what I'm going to be doing, yes, I try to maybe if I have the opportunity to take more gear than needed just in case, the instance happens that I need it. So yes, I do, I do bring other stuff rather than just the stuff that I need. We've been talking about low perspective. Here's one that's high perspective. This is in South Africa. This, this elephant was coming at us. Dust was flying because he was walking through this little dusty area, and I wanted to be eye level with him. So I literally stood up on the vehicle and got as high as I could to be able to be at eye level with him. So in this case, I needed a higher perspective, right, to be at eye level with him, because these guys are big, and this specific bull was very big. This is full frame with my, I think this was shot with a 600 or the 4, I don't remember. I think it was a 6, but this is full frame. This is not crop. So that tells you how close he was and how big he is. But again, getting that perspective to be able to capture, the angle that you want to showcase the animal a different way makes the image better. One of the things I always tell everybody is capture, a subject differently than it normally is. That will give you a better composition. That will make your image more interesting. I can photograph, gators in the water. I'm thinking Florida here, so I'm thinking gators. What's a typical gator shot, right? The typical little eye popping out of the water type shot. But if you can do something different, maybe get a different perspective, get a different angle, shoot him with a wide angle, of course, be safe. We don't want to get hurt here. If you capture it differently, it will make that image more interesting than your typical image of that specific subject. Question from Barbara: what setting are you using to create the blurred foreground and background? I'm shooting pretty open, and I'm shooting with long lenses. Remember, I shoot mostly 600, 500, and 400 lenses, and I shoot very, very open. What I mean by that is f4 to about f6.37.1. I rarely open up or stop down more than that. If you look at my work, or if you follow me online, you'll see that backgrounds are just as important as the subject themselves. So I tend to shoot pretty open. So anywhere between f4 to f7.1, depending on the distance to the subject, and of course also depending on the focal length of the lens that I'm using. And again, most of my work is with 400 plus lenses. My 600 lens is probably my most used lens. So I do a lot of long lens work. Learn your gear. What I mean by that, we talked about learning the gear that you need, but what I mean by learn your gear is using your camera on the fly and working your body lens combination. I'll give you an example. I'm in blinds with clients and we're photographing, I don't know, let's say crested caracara, which are very popular here in South Texas. And I see a bird coming in and he's backlit, he's high in the sky, but it's very interesting because he has a beautiful wingspan or something. And I'll tell my clients, guys, look at the caracara on the left coming in, backlit, overexposed 2 stops, because you have to overexpose to be able to get, to get detail on something that's that highly backlit, right? And my clients will do this. They'll pull back, they'll hit the menu on their camera, they'll go through the menu settings, trying to figure out how to overexpose. By the time they, and they know how to do it, but by the time they have it, that bird is gone. That bird flew by, gone. We can't even see him anymore. You need to learn how to change settings on the fly, understanding that the front wheel, depending on how your camera is set, and there's no wrong way or right way because everybody's different. It's whatever works for you. But I know that, for example, my cameras, my front wheel is my f-stop. My back wheel is my shutter speed. And my other back wheel is my ISO. I shoot in manual mode. I know exactly what finger needs to turn to get me to 2+ overexposure. And I do it instantly without even thinking about it. This comes from, remember the basic earlier? Practice, practice, practice. Developing that mental memory that we need. Time is not something we have as wildlife photographers. Things happen in milliseconds and then it's over. So you need to be able to react in milliseconds to be able to capture the image that you're after. So learning, I need to overexpose, that's 3 clicks in the front wheel opening up more, or if you're shooting full manual, I need to overexpose. That's 2 clicks. That's 6 clicks of the back wheel, because that's gonna crank up my ISO from, let's say, 400 ISO to maybe 1200 ISO, and I know that's gonna be 6 clicks on the back wheel. Again, this comes with practice. I do this, I'm very blessed that I get to do this almost every day. And I've been doing this almost every day for the last 15 years. But it comes with practice. It comes with doing it over and over and over again. You don't need to be like me and be out there every day. But if you keep practicing, you'll be better at it. You'll understand how your wheels work and what needs to turn if you need to over or underexpose, or if you need to speed up your camera or slow down your camera. we were photographing this bronze cowbird displaying for this female. And all of a sudden he goes on full display where they hover above her, and they hover there for about 10 seconds. Again, this is in the spring. This is during mating season. They're trying to attract a girl. We were doing portraits. So I was shooting at maybe 1/640, 1/420. I don't remember. And when he went up in the air, I knew I needed speed. So that meant my back wheel had to go from 1/400ths of a second to 1/3200ths of a second. So instantly my thumb went into action, changing that speed so I can capture the, so I can freeze him and capture the behavior. This took 4 or 5 seconds that he was up there, and then he was down. If I would have taken the time to, okay, let me see, what do I need to do? Okay, if I turn this wheel, I mean, by the time I get it figured out, it's over. So again, you need to do it instantly. And this comes with practice, folks. You have to get out there and practice it. Sometimes we'll capture a subject and we want to capture it a specific way. In this case, I'm doing a slow shutter speed panel with him, where I'm panning with the subject, shooting him at a slower shutter speed than normally, because I want the subject sharp, but I want everything else to show motion, right? To show speed, to show what's happening. And again, understanding how to dial in those settings instantly, because how long is this Roadrunner going to be in front of me? 2 seconds at most. When I saw him coming in from the left and he was hauling, I said, okay, I mean, instantly I got to change my settings and I got to capture something equals by. 2 seconds later, it was over. So again, being able to dial up these settings instantly without thinking will make you create a better image, will make you better with your camera. And it doesn't have to be something as fast as the Roadrunner or as the cowbird displaying. This was in Kenya a few years back, 3-4 years back, I don't remember. And we got the call that the leopard had just taken down the Impala. And when we got there, I mean, this had just happened. Maybe it had taken it down, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds before we got there. But when we got there, the only position we had was backlit. The sun was in our face, as you can see on this image. So I knew that I had to overexpose him to get some detail on him. So I immediately overexposed. 1 stop, 2 stops. I don't remember the exact, but I think it was maybe stop and 3/4. I don't remember. And I was able to create the image because shortly after this, it picked up the Impala and it took it into a ditch to hide it. So this didn't last very long. But again, by being able to react quickly, I was able to capture the image. Not only that, I got a beautiful backlit image. I have some really nice rim lighting around the subject. And if I ever wanted to do just a silhouette of this image, I have that data captured on my raw file, so I can always do it in post. And I can, by capturing it this way, where I captured a lot of data, I can go back to post. And if I just want a silhouette, I can underexpose it in post and create a totally different image with the same raw file. That's a whole other program, by the way, on how to expose properly by pushing the data to the right. But again, dialing in the settings quickly before the action is over. And this comes with practice, folks. Now, this is a sloth. They don't move very fast, so you don't have to be real fast with this one. But believe it or not, this didn't take all day. This sloth came down this branch. Luckily, there was some separation between her and the background. But I knew that the separation was not good enough to completely blur the background because the background was very close to her. No matter what f-stop I would have shot it at, the background would have been there. So what I decided to do in this case was, okay, she's lighter than the background. I am going to spot meter on her, or I'm going to meter on her, putting light on her and the baby and making the background go a little darker so I can showcase her better. So the same thing, again, understanding that my background was not going to blur regardless of what f-stop I shot it, but understanding that if I exposed for her because she was lighter than the background would go darker and it would showcase her a little bit better. When you're doing high key images, this was a very cloudy day. There was the sky was just so I decided to do high key. So again, overexposed, 2 stops, got really low so I can shoot up at them. That way I had no ground back, no ground on the background, just basic sky behind them. It was cloudy. There was no detail. So I overexposed it, I think 2.5 stops, and I was able to create this high key image. And again, this happened quickly. She licked the baby a couple of times and then it was over. I was able to also create a different image, same subjects. This is the same day, maybe I don't know, 2-3 minutes later, but the same thing, overexposing to create a high key image. Same thing with this one. You know, we were for this is this year. This was actually about a month ago. I was in South Africa about a month ago, creating. You know, we were sitting next to a bee. You know, the bee eater colony, and they kept flying around with bugs, catching bugs. And you know, when I saw this, they would perch on this perch, and from there they would jump down to their hole. So when I saw this behavior, I said, okay, I want to catch them as they're jumping down to their hole. I dialed in, you know, I think this was taken at 1/5000th of a second to be able to really stop it. I didn't have a lot of light, so I shot it wide open f4. I would have loved to shoot it a little bit, you know, stop down a little more to get a little bit more depth of field, but I knew I couldn't because, again, I just did not have that much light. But dialing in those, you know, those settings quickly, I was able to capture the bee eater as he's flying down into the hole. So, use of the appropriate supporting gear, right point of view, learn your gear, field are the three things. Now, the fourth thing is field ethics and etiquette. Blend in, leave no trace, respect locations and others, and plan ahead. I cannot overemphasize this, that no image is worth it if you're putting yourself or your subject in danger. Like I said earlier, I use blinds, I use hides, I use a vehicle as a blind. But I never, and again, I use 600mm lens, sometimes with a 2x converter, giving me 1200mm of reach. At no point have I ever, you know, I always try never to encroach into the subject's natural or alter the subject's natural behavior. That's why I use hides. That's why I use blinds. That's why I use very long lenses. No image is worth it if you're putting yourself or, you know, a subject in danger, or you're altering that subject's behavior to create an image. We have to leave no trace where we're at, right? We have to respect the locations and the others that are using the location. Nowadays, as you all know, when we go to some of the public places to photograph, there's a lot of people out there. Because, you know, with the internet and with Instagram and everything going on, these locations are known now, and a lot of people go to them. So when you go and you photograph, this is at Jasper National Park in Canada, I'm photographing, you know, at a bull elk during the rut. This is shot with a 600 lens, and this is cropped heavily. That gives you an idea how far away I am from this guy. Because again, I'm not going to put myself in danger or the animal in danger for the sake of a photograph. So always keep that in mind. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So as a wildlife photographer, we always try to, you know, one of our number one priorities should be the welfare of our subjects. This is in Chile. This is also shot with a 600mm lens, and you can see how big the mountains look behind it. That gives you an idea how far away I was. Again, this was a mama puma with her 3 cubs, actually 4 cubs. You don't see the other one. The other one's just off. He didn't fit. It's just off the lens, you know, off the frame here. But again, always keeping your distance, always being respectful of a distance, never trampling over the habitat for the sake of a photograph. So we always want to blend in. One of the things I tell everybody, you know, is like, you know, when I go to locations and there's a lot of people there, you know, I just, you know, I'm going to say Bosque, for example. Some people, I know some photographers, friends of mine that get mad. It's like, oh, look at all these people here. You know, I look at it the other way. I look at it as an opportunity to network, to meet people. You know, it's amazing how, you know, how wildlife photographers and nature photographers share with one another. So when I go to a location that is just way too crowded, sometimes I just take a step back and I just start talking to people instead of photographing and creating a situation that's going to be unpleasant, right? So work the location, and again, try to blend in, be nice to others, and most importantly, never put yourself or your subject in danger. You know, why do we lay down in the mud, in the muck, to get low angle shots like this? Again, to you know, to not intrude, to not make an animal behave differently just because you're there. Your images will not be as good. I've seen images that people say, oh, look at that wonderful image, but I can see that that animal has, you know, that the behavior of that subject has been altered and it doesn't look natural. So your images will not be as good as something that's not, you know, altered, or not an animal that's not spooked, you know, and things like that. So again, you know, try always to blend in and try always to be respectful of the location and your subject. So those are my 4 field techniques and the things that I follow when I'm out there by myself photographing, and sometimes with clients, of course. But again, when I'm out with clients, it's a little different because it's more of an educational, you know, type of environment where I'm teaching. But this is the things that I follow when I'm out in the field. Planning ahead. How do I plan ahead for my shots? I always target what I want. And I talked a little bit about this. I always go out with a specific target in mind. I always imagine what I want to create. Like I said earlier, learn the locations. I always do better the second, third, fourth time around in a specific location because I know what's there now. I know what's happening. I know how to set myself properly, so I can capture what I'm looking for. You saw the chili shot earlier. I knew that if I positioned myself at this location with my long lens, that this puma would more than likely walk in front of us. And sure enough, but I went with this specific image in mind, and we set ourselves properly to be able to capture the image. There was a lot of other things going on. There was some, guanacos. There was some, gray foxes. But again, I concentrated on pumas because that's where I went there to capture. So I came back with some really, really nice images that I created because again, all my efforts went to capture the pumas. This is in Chile, in Patagonia. This is here at home, just north of me in Rockport, where the whooping cranes winter. This is the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge. I went out there one day without plans, just me and the boat captain that I use. And I told him, Kevin, I want to photograph the whoopers feeding. So we're going to ignore everything else till we find a group that's feeding. And sure enough, we went out there and there was some nice, whoopers close by, but they were just standing there or maybe just grazing. And I said, nope, I want them catching crabs. So we concentrated on this, and that's all we concentrated on. And finally we got a group that was, that we were able to get the position that I wanted. Now here, you cannot get off the refuge. It's not allowed. So I'm shooting from a boat. I would have loved to have been able to get a low perspective here, but it's just not possible. So I'm not going to break the rules to do that. But still, with my long lens, by shooting this with a 600, and I believe I put a 2x converter on this one. So I was actually shooting at 1200 millimeters. I was able to capture the image and get a good enough background, even though it would have been much better on the ground. But again, you're not allowed to get off the boat. So, you're not allowed to step foot on the refuge because of course, as you all know, the whooping cranes are highly, highly protected. But again, targeting what I was after, I was able to create the image that I had in mind. Rattlesnake here at home. I wanted a low perspective rattlesnake, and I wanted to shoot it through some taller grass to get this soft diffused foreground leading up to it. And so, yes, I'm laying down on the ground shooting at him. But again, I'm using a long lens, so I'm not very close here. I'm probably, I don't know, 6-7 feet away. I don't remember. I do get close. I've been handling snakes since I was a teenager. I love snakes. I'm not afraid of them. I respect them 100%, but I'm not afraid of them. But in this case, I wanted this nice, soft foreground leading to the subject. So I used my long lens and I laid on the ground. My lens is literally on the ground. I think I'm shooting through the grass, as you can see, to get this soft, this soft look to the rattlesnake. So again, going out with a specific image in mind. In the fall, this time of the year, the coveys of quail are numerous down here. We're very lucky that we have a very healthy population of quail at our ranch. And in the fall, they're all together. If you come in the springtime, you don't see this. In the springtime, they're paired up. They're all paired up, male, female, and that's it. And a couple bachelors here and there. But in the fall, they're still together as coveys. These are all probably siblings or two coveys that maybe got together. So I knew that there was a big covey of quail coming into this water hole. So when I went out there to photograph that day, I did not set up anything else but except I wanted the covey of quail coming in to drink. So I went late in the day when I knew that they come in to drink, and I cleared everything. There was no perches, no nothing. I just wanted the nice, clean background as this big covey of quail came in to drink. And again, understanding the behavior and understanding the time of year where I needed to be out there, I was able to create the image. Back to having the right body lens combination. One of the other things that is a must is, especially when you're planning ahead, is understanding what a lens can do for you and cannot do for you. As I've said earlier, I shoot a lot with long lenses, 600, 400 millimeters, 500s. So I plan accordingly for that. This is in Uganda. This is in the Bwindi National Park, in Peterborough National Park in Uganda. Two things before going out there. I know that, I know the distance that we're allowed to be from the mountain gorillas. And I know that I'm shooting in very low light conditions because it's heavy canopy, in the cloud forest. So I knew that I needed to take a 70-200, and I knew that I needed to take a 2.8 lens because I was going to shoot very, very open to let a lot more light in. to be able to create the image. As you can see, the image itself is dark, but it's because I'm trying to showcase what I saw, right? But again, so understanding that I needed a specific, if I would have taken my 600, it would have, too much lens. So in this case, I knew that I needed to take a 200. I took a 70-200 2.8. And I know that I needed a 2.8 lens because I need to let a lot of light in. So understanding the right lens combination for the specific subject that I'm targeting is a must. Same thing with this, with this loth in Costa Rica. Very, very low light, very, thick rainforest canopy. Now here's a little different. This guy's not as close. This guy, I shot it with a 400 because he's a little bit further away from me. But shooting it wide open, I was able to blur a little bit more around him to showcase him a little bit better. So understanding what my camera can do and not do, I was able to create the image. King vulture, Costa Rica as well. This is shot with a 600 millimeter and a 2x teleconverter. And I believe the camera is set to crop. So I'm literally shooting this at about 2000 millimeters to be able to get this close and be able to get this detail on the king vulture as he was preening. But again, understanding the lens camera combination I needed before going out there and planning ahead, I was able to create an image like this because I knew that I wanted to create some portraits, right, of these guys. They're so interesting. Their colors are so vivid. These are amazing, amazing vultures down there. And, they're very, very photogenic. Have plan B for inclement weather. What is the one thing we have no control over? Weather, right? I get this from clients all the time. Hector, we're going to Costa Rica for a week. What happens if it rains? It rains. That's what happens. We need to learn how to work the conditions that you're given. So if you get a rainy day, learn that if you slow down your camera enough, if your subject is static enough, you can get some nice, long streaks of the rain by slowing the camera down to maybe 1/200, 1/125 of a second, if the subject allows it, if the subject's not moving. If you get a day that's extremely cloudy, that the light is just not there, do some hikes. You saw the images of the giraffes earlier. This is something very similar. The light was just not there. It was extremely cloudy that day. We didn't see the sun the whole entire day. The sky was basically white, grayish type of sky. But I knew that when I saw this, when I saw this yellow-throated toucan on this tree, I knew that if I overexposed it, I could create a very pleasant, high-key image. So I guess, again, I'm working with the conditions that I'm given, right? They're not ideal conditions, but this is something I can't change. I cannot change the weather. I cannot make the clouds go away. But I can learn how to shoot in those conditions to create better images. And that's what these two images are all about. Fog. Foggy morning here in South Texas. This was a couple of years back during the deer rut. I love, in a way, this is a condition that we were not expecting, but I'll be honest with you, I love shooting in the fog. It's the mystique and the look and the feel of a foggy image, especially when you're photographing something like a white-tailed deer, to me is just fantastic. So I was very happy when I got there out that morning and it was foggy. And this is as the fog's already lifting, the sun's coming up and the sun is already warming up the scene, but there's still some fog there. And it creates a very pleasant image of this Fleming response. The deer is doing a lip curl. This is in the middle of the rut. This was taken this time of year, about 2 years ago. Last and definitely not least, make it enjoyable, right? And have fun. We cannot create good images if you're not having fun. I always tell my clients when they're out with me, I have, a couple of rules. And one of the most important rules is it needs to be fun. We need to be having, fun out there, because if not, why are we out here? So I like to do things that normally, just do things differently. This is a Hummer coming into a flower and I'm photographing it with a macro lens. So again, a lot of fun, and I've never done it before. So, I usually do Hummers with a long lens, but in this case, I'm using a 105 macro. As you all know, Hummers are not afraid of us. If you stand still and you don't pose a threat, they'll come right up to you to feed. We talked about this earlier. This is during September with the ruby throats when they come in and they're in abundance down here. We talked about this before the program had started. This is not a ruby throat. This is one of our resident Hummers. This is a buff bellied. But again, I'm shooting him with a 100 macro. So it was a lot of fun, just photographing a subject with a different type lens that I've never done it before. So, keeping it interesting, keeping it fun. This Roadrunner, I was shooting it with a long lens, and he started picking up, butterflies that were flying around. And we had a blast that day. I mean, just creating the images as we saw this, as we saw the Roadrunners coming in. We had two. This was a pair. They kept coming in and picking up the butterflies in front that were hanging around the water hole. And sometimes, again, with the conditions, we talked about conditions, right? This is at Bosque del Apache. No light that day. It was cold. It was rainy. I mean, the clouds were extremely thick. We just had no light as the cranes are taking off early morning. So there was no way I could speed up my camera enough to get sharp images. So what did I do? I did the opposite. I slowed down my camera and I panned and I shot them with a very, very slow shutter speed, 1/20th, 1/40th of a second, to create some abstracts, right? To create some abstracts, create something different. And that's all I did all morning. And believe me, it was a ton of fun. I mean, because it's shooting outside my comfort zone, I guess, if you want to call it. But creating something different, creating something, not the norm, because again, I just did not have the conditions, but I was already there. What was I going to do? Oh, no sun, no light, I'm going home. No, I'm going to shoot it differently. I'm going to do some really, really slow shutter speed blurs as the cranes are taking off. And I was able to create some, pretty unique images. And again, it was a ton of fun. So we always have to, make it fun. So planning ahead, target your subject, have the right bottle lens combination. And again, I cannot emphasize that enough. You've heard me say that a lot during this presentation. We want to have a plan B for inclement weather. And of course, make it enjoyable and have fun. So if you follow these techniques, if you follow, I'm a big believer that there's more than one way to do photography. If anybody tells you this is the only way to do it and this is the way you have to do it, no, that's not right. I don't care how you get there, as long as you're getting there. That's what I tell my clients all the time. If your final product is where it needs to be, I'm okay no matter how you got there. If you shot it manual, if you shot it aperture mode, I don't care how you get there as long as you're getting there. It's when you're not getting there that we need to look at your steps and see what needs to be corrected or what needs to be improved. My workflow, the way I shoot, is things I've learned throughout my career from different people. I've never taken a photography course in my life, guys. Everything I do is self-taught and things I've learned from other photographers that have been in my path for the last 15 years, or that I'm friends that we go out and photograph together. I take little bits and pieces from this photographer. I like the way he or she does that, or I like the way he or she, another photographer does this, and I combine them to create my own style, to create my own way. So I'm a big believer in that. So take what you learn from me, and if there's anything that you can incorporate to your own workflow, to the way you shoot your your images to help you get better, that's what it's all about. So understanding that positioning, lens that you use, backgrounds, and all that comes with with practice, and it comes with different things that I've learned throughout the years. These are all Africa shots. This was this year in Kenya, where I go every year, except last year. We didn't go last year because of COVID, but we were back this year, and we're going back next year. So if you do want to follow my work and you want to learn a little bit more about myself and what I do, you can, the best way to do it is go to my website. It's very easy. It's my name, hectorastorga.com. On my website, you're going to find a link that you can sign up for my newsletter. It's a free newsletter, and it only goes out once a month, so I'm not going to bombard you with emails. On the newsletter, you'll find different articles that I write every month about photography, tips, tricks, things that I do. I write about traveling, how to travel, how to pack, all photography related for, the things that I do as a wildlife photographer. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. Instagram is my name, Hector_Astorga_photography. You can follow me there as well. Thank you for having me tonight. I hope you enjoyed this. And with that, I will open it up for any other questions you guys might have.
Well, Hector, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's see what kind of questions the group might have. Alan, I know you must have a macro question.
Well, I'll make a couple of comments for the group, and then I may ask a question. For those of you who've heard us talk about point of view, or, Hector's presentation tonight really took point of view to an extreme where he was maybe a couple inches above ground level in cases where he was photographing the roadrunners and so on. That often is something you'll hear over and over again in wildlife photography. It really helps the viewer to, and you can expand on this if you'd like, Hector, it really showcases the subject in ways where you're really showing them in their element, so to speak. And it was amazing to hear. He's the first photographer I've heard that digs a hole for himself, so to speak. So his blind is actually mostly in the ground. I think that's phenomenal. And the pictures reflect that level of dedication to do so. What I was amazed at in some of your images, you state that you photograph wide open most of the time.
Yes, sir.
Yet you're getting very good depth of field on your subject, especially. And with the hummingbird, I suspect using a macro lens in that situation, I suspect you were not wide open because of the depth of field on the subject with a macro lens.
No, on the macro lens, I was pretty stopped down because, as you know, with a macro lens on something, something that close, because
Right.
the Hummer was literally maybe 10 inches from me. On something that close, your depth of field is, razor thin. So I mean, if I remember correctly, I shot that at f/18, f/20, somewhere around there.
Okay. But
Luckily I had a lot of light, so I was able to, keep my ISO lower. But yes, for most of my macro work, that's the only time that I open up quite a bit. I'm opening to f/15, f/16 or higher, because again, you need that depth of field.
Right.
Because with a macro lens, if you think you have a thin depth of field with a long 600, with a macro it's even thinner. Especially when you're that close to a subject.
With that said, my one question to you is, and it goes to knowing your equipment. I have found that with my macro lens, that when I pass f/18 and I'm stopping down further, I get diffraction, so I get softer images.
Okay.
Do you do test images to see where your lens begins to lose sharpness, whether you're wide open or stopping down? Or do you have software to sort of correct for that diffraction?
There is software that you can correct for the diffraction. I'll be honest with you, I'm not that technical. I don't, my brain don't work that much in that technical side. I'm more of an artsy side type of brain, if you want to call it. But yes, you do, sometimes you do see it, you do see it when you're shooting wide open. But sometimes, if you position yourself properly, you can avoid, you can hide it a little bit better, because it's always going to be there. That's just the nature of the lens, right? It's not something that I worry much about, it, to be honest with you, because if I do get an image that's really, really bad in diffraction, I can always run it through Photoshop and correct that in post.
Okay.
I'm more concerned in capturing the angle, the point of view, having the correct light to capture the subject how I want to capture it, or create the image how I want to capture. On the more technical type side, I always think that I can do it. I can correct that most in post.
All right, thank you. And I know you've heard this before. Your images are absolutely stunning. You make me feel
thank
like
you, sir.
an amateur
Appreciate
that just picked up a camera yesterday.
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Other questions or comments?
I have one coming in here on the chat. Nancy Freeman, tell us a little more about the LED panels you mentioned. Do you travel with them, and how big are they? I do have some small ones, and I have one here somewhere. Oh, here it is. This is one of them, and let me turn it on so y'all can see what it. And this one's pretty neat. It's a small one, and I can change the temperature on it. I can change, see that's from warm to cold. I can also change how strong or how low I can get it, so it's kind of adjustable. And you can get these from Hunts. This is where I get them from. You can just go to Hunts and you'll find tons of these. They're not expensive, I don't know. I think I paid $30 for something like this. So I do travel with these. Well, when I'm, for example, I'm headed to Costa Rica on Wednesday, and I'll be taking 2 or 3 of these because we're doing some macro work down there. For the Africa stuff, the LED panels, no, those are the ones. I don't know if you all saw the night shots with the lions coming into the water hole. Those are some pretty big LED panels. Those the guys in Africa have them, and we just set them up for the. I wouldn't be able to travel with something that big. So sometimes I'll go to locations where the equipment's already there, because I know where I'm going. But sometimes, of course, I'll take it myself if it's small enough that I can take it myself. And there's all kinds of LED lighting, guys. There's the panels. You can buy those lume cubes that are really small and they put out a lot of light, and you can light up some, some stuff really easy. And again, if you go to Hunt's, you'll find every kind of light cube, LED panel on their website, or just call Noah and the guys over there, and I'm sure that can help you out finding whatever you need. And again, these things are not expensive. You're looking at, I mean, there's everything, of course, there are some that are very, very expensive, but I use the $30-$20 version stuff because they work just as well, and again, and they're small and easy to carry. Susan, do you put the LED panel on the stand? Depends on the situation. If sometimes no, sometimes it's right on the ground. Or if I'm shooting macro, I'll have some, I will have like a little light stand that I can bring in or move around, because I don't like the light to come directly above me. I like the light to be more of a side light, especially when doing macro. So yes, I'll put it on a little light stand that I can move it around, or a small, one of those cheapy tripods, that you can buy that are very, light and inexpensive, and you can just put the light stand, the LED panel on there and move it around as needed. Robert, telephoto versus prime lens. Prime lens often carry limits on one that it's all carrying. Yes. Welcome to my world. Me personally, I rarely use my telephoto lens. I'm strictly a fixed lens shooter. I would say 90% of my work is with a fixed lens. Right now I'm shooting the 600. I'm shooting the 400. Those are my two main wildlife lenses. I do own the 100 to 400, and I shoot Sony, by the way, and I did own the 2 to 600, but I got rid of it. I didn't need it. I have a 600 prime. Primarily for me, the way I see it is I shoot a fixed lens. So if the situation changes where the subject gets too close or the subject gets too far, like I said earlier, learn to work the conditions that you're given. You saw the shot of the elephant earlier. I had a 600 in my hand when this guy came around the corner. I didn't have time to put it down or switch lenses. So I just worked the lens that I had on my hand. And I got a very nice, half head portrait kind of a shot, because that's all that fit. But that was the lens that I had in hand. If I would have put that lens down and start digging through my camera bag to try to pull the 100 to 400 out, it's over. The elephant's gone. He's past us, or he was walking towards us. So I had a 600 lens in my hand, so I worked it. So I, learn to work the lens that you have in your hand. Do an abstract, do a tight close-up, do something differently. This comes with going out there and shooting with that lens over and over again. But me personally, I love fixed lenses. I mean, and this, I'm not saying that telephotos are bad. It's just me. I mean, that's just the way I like to shoot. I get better backgrounds. I'm a very low light shooter. I usually tend to shoot right before the sun comes up, and usually by 9 a.m. I'm done. When I shoot by myself, not with clients, when I shoot by myself, because I really believe that the best light is that time in the morning, and the same thing in the afternoon. Now, if I get a cloudy day, I can go a little longer, but I tend to shoot very short. My shooting windows for what I like are very small. So I need a big f4 2.8 lens to keep my ISOs low, because again, I'm shooting in some very low light conditions. But again, I'm not against telephoto lens. It's just me personally, I prefer fixed lenses. All righty, and no other questions coming through the chat.
It looks like we're getting quiet. Again, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I encourage everybody to look at Hector's website. I actually went on it when I was looking around for speakers, and it's quite impressive. And he's got some interesting travel in there also. I'm always looking to go to Costa Rica, so I may be talking about you. I'll talk to you about that in the future.
Yes. I leave on Wednesday. I'll be going down there on Wednesday. I'm there for 20 days.
Okay, well, with that said, Hector, have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Again, take a look if you're interested in any of the equipment that Hector's mentioned. Hunt's is running a bunch of sales right now, and they always do. And they support us, so I try to support them. Okay, have a great evening, everyone. And I hope this was an hour or an hour and 15 minutes well spent for you. Have a
Thanks
great
again,
evening.
Hector, and have a great evening, everyone.
By the way, if anybody's got comments for me on programs or the workshops as I put them together, I'm always looking interested in collecting that information. This year, I was trying to plan around bringing young photographers in. And so next year, we'll try and mix that up with a different theme. Have a good evening.